So aloha everyone and welcome. Thank you so much for taking time today to join us for our Hawaiʻi Urban Interface Wildfire Grant Program informational webinar. My name is Nani Barreto. I am the co-executive director at the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, or HWMO for short, and I'll be helping to host today's informational session. I'd like to quickly introduce our presenters. We have Mike Walker, who's not on video at the moment. He is our state fire protection forester with the State Department of Forestry and Wildlife. And we also have Eric Moeller, who is HWMO's wildfire mitigation program support specialist. And we also have Jen Myers behind the scenes managing our Zoom. This webinar is a collaboration between us at HWMO and Mike Walker at the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. And the goal for today is really to walk you through the grant program, what it is, why it exists, and how you can apply. Just some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Again, please keep yourselves muted during the presentation. We have about 30 minutes worth. You're welcome to have your cameras on or off. And if you have any questions, we do have about 30 minutes after the presentation to address them, but you can also use the chat box if you want to drop your questions in as we go, and we'll be sure to address those at the end. Just briefly, we don't have a slide for, let's see, I'm letting folks in here, for Hawaii Wildfire, but for those of you that are new to our work, I just want to give you a quick background. We are a nonprofit. We've been around since 2000. We serve as the state's primary hub for wildfire prevention, mitigation, and planning across the state and even into the Western Pacific. We work closely with our communities, our fire and forestry agencies, and partners to help build wildfire ready and wildfire resilient communities and landscapes. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Eric Moeller, who's going to get us started. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and it's a pleasure to have you on board here. We're going to have this webinar today. We're going to go over several areas. One, we're going to talk about the HUI grant program and kind of what that is, get down and dirty on what it can apply for, what types of projects are eligible, how to apply, what to expect after applying, and then we're going to have some questions if you have those questions that come out. Basically, we felt that this would be a good avenue for us to get the information out to everybody at the same time and help prepare you if you're planning on putting in an application for this grant. We ask you to please hold your questions to the end of the presentation, so this way we can get through the presentation and then concentrate on those questions. If you need to, though, you can actually put those questions in the chat box, and we can handle them at the end of the presentation. Next up is Mike Walker. He's our state protection forester with the Division of Land and Natural Resources and the Department of Forestry and Wildlife. And he'll provide the backstory to this grant program and the overview of this year's program and the types of projects this grant program is intended to fund. So, Mike?
Hey, aloha, everybody. So, historically, there just weren't very many grant programs out there funding any type of fuel reduction or long-term planning for wildfire preparedness. We relied on the U.S. Forest Service's Wildland Urban Interface Grant Program for a long period of time. However, there was certain stipulations in that grant program that for, particularly not funding the development of water infrastructure like dry standpipes or tanks, or really funding anything like fences. And both of those things are kind of critical to a lot of the fuel reduction work that we do here in Hawaii. Coupling that with it, being a competitive grant program, we had to compete.
Mike, are you still with us?
I think he froze up there and stuff.
Eric, do you want to pick up maybe where he left off and tell
So,
me?
normally we're competing with the nationally for grant funding, and the issue that we tend to run into is that you're kind of competing against the mainland, and there's a lot of interest in the mainland, and there's a lot of grants that are over there and inputs. So the limited funds kind of get distributed in a much larger pool. What we wanted to do is have in the state here an actual source that we could go to actually address the needs that we have within the islands. And this project is actually a culmination of that, into which where we have funding locally and can actually have a little bit more control of where that fund goes. Um, the state pilot created this shovel-ready kind of approach to getting projects out and approved locally, where we're not competing on that national stage, which makes it a lot easier for us to tailor that program to what we have here locally. Um,
I'm
years.
back, Erica.
Oh, okay. There you go. If you want to
If
take
you
it.
want,
Sorry.
if you want me to continue.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so my apologies. I hope nobody heard me cursing when the when I lost connection there. Uh, yeah, so you left off kind of right at that state pilot bullet there, Eric.
Yeah, that's correct. I was just explaining that the funding that we're doing within the state makes it a little bit more tailorable for what we need in the islands here.
Yeah, that's correct. We have a little bit looser uh, definitions of what's fundable, just in terms of we kind of want it tailor-made really for what funding would actually needs to happen here in the state for fuel reduction work and for planning as well. So I think we can move on to the next slide. So we're supporting hazardous fuel reduction projects. So what does that really mean? That means, reducing grass cover, removing grass cover, either through mowing or chemical means or grazing, reducing basically any wildfire fuel that is causing a threat to our valuable resources like our communities and our forested watersheds. We have $1.5 million available. Each project can receive up to $300,000. And this is a 12-month timeline. So that's why we kind of focus on that shovel readiness. We really want to make sure that these projects are good to go and can really achieve some goals and get some solid work done within a year. We're really pushing for action here, and well, the money comes from the Department of Land and Natural Resources. Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization is the one that's administering the funds, and will be the point of contact for the application process as well as any kind of technical assistance that you might need. So what does it fund? I think I kind of went over that a little bit, with just the same kind of things I've talked about there with um, fuel reduction. We also are talking about fuel conversion. What does that mean? That means taking something like a grassland and turning it more into a forest, replacing invasives with, say, natives, or creating a food forest. There's a shaded fuel break, something like that, where you're converting the fuel type from something highly flammable to something less flammable. We're also funding maintenance of projects. That was one of the things that the U.S. Forest Service Wildland Urban Interface Grant Program did not cover. And we're also uh, have funds available for planning for future mitigation. So that way, if you don't necessarily have a shovel-ready hazardous fuel reduction project, you have the bones set up for some planning that you can do, and we can give you some funds. Say you need to write a grazing plan for a set area. So, um,
So it wasn't.
I think that's it for.
So, what makes a strong project? And this is kind of important when we look at putting together these projects and putting in the submittals for the application. We want to make sure that we're getting the biggest bang for the buck. As we know, we are limited very much, through the resources that are available. And we want to make sure that the money is going to actually make a conversion and actually an area that's going to, really take care of fire threats within the community. Um, we want to make sure that it can get done in the 1 year. There's sometimes that we think, we can move forward on these things, but they take a lot longer. A good example would be purchasing equipment. The actually delivery time to the islands of equipment that may be purchased could far outlast what the 1 year project is. So we ask you that when you're making your proposals for the projects, you take into consideration the timeline, and the timeline is important to get there. Does it reduce the risk, the broad scale risk? If we're just doing spot treatments that there's avenues for fire spread in and around where your project area is, maybe phasing out or actually expanding with other cooperators to get the biggest amount of area covered as possible. So we're not just doing spot treatments that really doesn't affect the overall community. And then do you have the ability to perform the work that's required? One of the things we found in the first round was that there was several of the projects included a lot more administrative work that they didn't anticipate, and it actually led to some creative handlings of those areas and really diving deep and down. So we ask you to take a realistic approach when we're putting these projects together to make sure that you have clear objectives, you have the money that's required to do the project that you're recommending, and then also making sure that you can get it done in the time frame that's there. Next slide, please. Along with this, we got to make sure that the money's going to the right places. So the eligible entities that we have with this is nonprofits with a 501c3 status, homeowners associations with a 501c4 status, and local government entities. Now, there is the ability for other community groups to come together and actually do these projects and put an application in, but they would have to use a fiscal sponsor that meets the eligibility criteria. Unfortunately, private individuals and for-profit entities are not eligible for this type of a grant. Next slide, please. As Mike had pointed out, it's up to 300 per project request, and that's based on the work that you're anticipating. It does require a 25% match, and that could be in cash or in kind. In kind is where you use volunteer hours or actually other people helping and assisting with the project that you can assign a value to and actually bring that 25% up. Project length is 12 months. So you would start in June and end in May. And then we do this in the funding in advanced installments. What that means is that we 3 times a year will provide funding. Start first as a 50% expenditure of funds that will actually disperse. Then around the midpoint will be 40%, and then towards the end will be the 10% of the funds that's requested. All of this is negotiable depending on the type of project that you come forward with, or in the case that you have certain contractual requirements that is more than, let's say, the 50% upfront or more at the midpoint. that we can talk about, but that would be on a case-by-case basis. We do require that financial reports, and you don't need to go back, Jen. That's fine. We do require that financial reports are required monthly to be put in, and it basically is the amount expended per category. This way, we can stay on top of where the funding is and make sure that we're having completeness in the consummation of funds. Allowable costs are listed here. I'm not going to belabor with every little thing here, but there is project management. There is going to be cost and overhead for actually the time for coordinating and reporting and oversight. And that's something that can be recouped as far as the costs in the project. Contractor costs are those that are if you have a contract that's doing the work. Basically, those costs are applicable to this, but it has to be in direct support for the project itself. Supplies and materials that may be needed to complete the work, and that's within reason, of course. You got to show that there's a direct nexus between the materials that you're getting and the project itself. Small equipment can be purchased also. We have to make sure though that once again it has a direct applicability to the project. And then other costs. So if you have any community outreach, any letter campaigns or anything like that, the disposal of biomass or the removal of trees, that kind of stuff can be done as well. All costs need to be reasonable, necessary, and directly related to the project. We do need to also make sure that you are clearly describing and justifying any proposals for expenses. And it's the requirement for the person that receives the grant to maintain the documentation that goes into the justification and also for the receipts for the different projects. And at any time, we may need to contact you for the provision of those receipts and stuff. So we ask you to please keep good files on anything doing with the fiscal side of the house. We do have some procurement requirements, and we can get into them a little later as far as when you're going to go out for a contract, having more than one contractor bid and actually, get a cost estimate going with the best value as possible. Next slide. Okay, there's also some things we can't use these funds for. This is kind of important as you do it. So if you're using, let's say, a homeowners association, and you're reimbursing yourself through the grant, if the homeowners association is working on things that are not directly related to or tied to the actual project, that's not considered an acceptable disbursement of funds. Rent, utilities, and general admin that are ongoing need to not be part of this as well. If it's for the direct performance of the grant and within the grant period, that should not be a problem. But as far as rent, utilities, and other stuff that is an ongoing thing that's not directly tied to the grant, that can't be part of it. Large capital purchases that don't necessarily apply. So you wouldn't get a backhoe, for instance, for a grass cutting contract or something. So you'd make sure that that's in place. The other thing is that the existing funding needs to be directly tied to the project, not to a project that you've already been doing. So if the homeowners association is looking at extending contracts that have already been in place, that could be considered a non-allowable cost. We'd have to talk about that. I'd say the best thing in any of this is if you have any questions as far as what's acceptable or not acceptable, just ask them, and we'll get back to you so you don't have any ambiguity on what that is. Next slide, please. So what is the application process? And basically we have this broken down into 5 areas, and we'll talk about it. So the application has opened, and the application website is open for you to go into. We ask you to please go in, make your submissions. Once your submissions are in and the application window closes, and I'll talk about those dates in a second, we'll have a review process. Our review process is through a rubric kind of approach. And we have multi-jurisdictional cadre of people that will be reviewing each of the submissions and racking and stacking them and making sure that we have a good award process in doing that. Once the decisions are made on the applications that come in, we'll have an award decision, and we will contact those grantees that have been selected for this year's project. And then the project start date will be June 1st. We'll get that in a second, but that will be open and up front. We'll let you know exactly where we are and what that timeline is. Next slide, please. So some tips and tricks. We're trying a new system this year. We have an actual web-based application process that should help facilitate not only the grading of the applicants and racking and stacking them, but for us to get information such as the quarterly reports and everything else. But as you do this, there's some tips that we wanted to go over. First and foremost, we want you to download the application preparation worksheet. It's on the site. It gives you basically a PDF of all the questions that the website is going to ask you. And it gives you the opportunity to pre-fill in these boxes and stuff so it's not so cumbersome when you're going through it. We want you to make sure that you list all of your anticipated objectives that the project is going to be. What we found with this last year is that there was a little what we call mission creep in the military. It's where some of the objectives weren't fleshed out in the beginning, and it became changes to the actual grant. We want to make sure that all of your objectives and what you're trying to get is clearly and clearly articulated into the grant proposal. I put this down. Cut and paste is great. If you go into Word, you can go ahead and write your paragraphs on the different areas that need to be filled in. Make sure it's under 2,000 characters because you're kind of limited to the 2,000 characters in the grant proposal process. We're trying to keep it easily digestible for anybody that's reading this. So I would say do it in Word. Make sure it looks good, that that all the grammar is correct in it, and then cut and paste that into the website when you do get into the website. If for some reason you need to go beyond 2,000 characters, or you want to add supplemental information or pictures and stuff, at the end of the process in the application, there is a window that allows you to add that stuff as well. And that is not limited to a certain amount of characters. You save that as a PDF and just download as a PDF and it'll get in there. We also ask that if you're planning on putting in a submittal for, let's say, a community or for a large area, that you get consensus of the people that are in that community before you put in. You may have the greatest of idea, but if we don't have buy-in with the people and the properties that you may be on, you tend to run into some snags as time goes down through the project and being able to meet all of the objectives that you had put out. And then the last thing is ensure that the right of entry to those properties is in the works of being negotiated and approved, or actually in place on those areas that you're putting in your project. The last thing you want to do is to spend all this time to get the money and to get the project, and then the property that you need to do the work on, the person says, no, I don't want that to be done. So make sure those communication ties and that approval process is well underway as you put the application in. Just remember to keep everything very linear and simple if you can, as far as what you're putting into the areas, and try not to put acronyms or anything into the application that somebody that isn't familiar with the area that you're in would not understand. Keep it really good so it's an easy way for us to review that and to understand what you're going for. Next slide, please. So real quick, this is a view of what you're going to see when you go into the application process, the portal. It's broken into 5 areas. There's application information, or the applicant information, project overview. There's a project impact and implementation page, a budget and organizational capacity page, and then supporting information. And as I said in the last slide, the supporting information is where you'd have any overruns, pictures, maps, or anything you wanted to download. Basically, if you look at the graphic that's on your right, you'll see that at the top it says applicant information, and then there's tabs that go along with project overview. You can click in between any of these tabs and it will automatically save as you do that. It saves on a cyclic basis. I think it's every 10 seconds. But if you need to go back and forth, that's an easy way to do that and to see. We ask you to make sure, though, that the project title on this first page and the project overview title, which is on the next page, matches. Don't change those out. That way it'll stay the same on both those areas and be a little easier for us to actually find. Make sure that there is budget clarity in what you're proposing. We want to make sure that the budget is clearly identified, how you want to spend and what you think the expenditures will be. And then once again, the project scope needs to be clear. What is the overall scope? What are the objectives to obtain that scope? And what is the timeline that you're anticipating? Next slide, please. So the key dates are right here. The March application opened about a week ago. We're looking for April 20 for a submission deadline for anybody that's going to be putting in for the grant. April and May will be our review process. In May, towards the end of May, we will decide who the awardees are and get in touch with them. And then June 1st is the project start date. Next slide. So what happens after all this goes in and everything else? I mean, if you're awarded and you do get the money for the grant, there are expectations and reporting formats. So our reporting expectations there are quarterly reports that are both programmatic and financial. And you'll get the outline of what we're looking for those, but we ask you to keep good records. There may be periodic updates if we have specific needs or specific questions we're trying to answer from our organization, and we might be reaching out for you. The fiscal reporting is very, very, very important. We need to make sure that you maintain good financial data and good receipts and expenditure justifications in what you're doing within your grant. And then what we're really looking for is at throughout the project and at the end, we're going to be probably we will be following up with status updates. These status updates will include kind of where you are with the objectives, percentage of completed, and how you're going. I think developing key performance indicators for each of your objectives is important at the beginning. This gives us something to measure against and make sure that we're capturing success. And then the percentage of completeness that you're having throughout the year. If we're 50% through the year and you're only 20% expended, we would need to determine why is there that disparity. And there are reasons for that and stuff, but we will be working together. But there will be deliverables throughout the grant phase to report back and let us know where you are. Next slide, please. So just some key things to keep in the mind is there's a strategic approach when we talk about fuels treatment and we're talking about mitigation. We want fuels treatment to reduce fire intensity, the rate of spread, and ember production. This is how a fire spreads in the wildland environment. In your projects, if you're working on reducing that fire behavior, it's important that you try to address those three things in your project. You also want to make sure that it promotes life safety, any evacuation, and suppression effectiveness. What I mean by the suppression effectiveness is access for firefighting vehicles. If you have fuel breaks, that the fuel break will act as a area where a fire was intended or anticipated to go out without outside treatments coming in. It's important that we identify within your proposals that the focus is on modifying fire behavior, not eliminating. There is no way without spraying the countryside with gunite to take away all risk for fire. Even the best of fire breaks and fuel breaks and work that we do, even with the defensible spaces around homes, there's still that opportunity for a fire to get into those areas. A lot of us remember the August 8th fire and the speed and the wind and the heat and the embering from the fire. That was back up on Maui, also down here on the Big Island. We were having spotting quarter a mile to a half a mile downrange from the actual fire itself. So it's important to understand that what we're doing here is modifying fire behavior. We're not eliminating it. And then the last thing is something I think is really important is to talk about scalability. The old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I think the same thing is here. We want to start an effective approach to actually modifying the fuel behavior or the fire behavior, and start small and work our way out and make sure that we're allowing this to become a scalable kind of defensive posture throughout the fire threat and the regime that we have on the islands. Next slide, please. So as we move forward, I think it's important for us to take a kind of a step and look back. We had 9 total awardees across 4 islands on this last go around for this grant, and it's been huge. There's a lot of lessons learned that we got from that. We've applied that kind of into our application process, and we'll also be reaching out as we go through the review process for the submittals. If we see anything in there that we can at least talk to, we'll do that and get back with you on that. Overall, what we want to see is this continuation of large-scale management of fueled areas and areas of threat from wildfire. And I just wanted to highlight that you can see the great work that's been done with the grantees we have this year, and hopefully your submittals will be on this slide next year. Next slide, please. So, as far as the submittals that you put in, one of the things we want to make sure is that it's a realistic approach. Sometimes we kind of get ahead of our skis, so to speak, and we think that we can do a great deal of amount of work when it's not. For instance, and I'll just use an example. Weed whacking. I'm going to weed whack a field, and you get out there and you find out the field is in an terrain, or you want to clear out gulches, and it's not until you get into the project that you realize that it's not feasible to get in those gulches and actually weed whack out. We ask you to please look at what you're recommending, where you are in your proposals, and make sure there's a realistic kind of anticipation of what you can do as far as a project within 1 year. Another example would be a project that's so broad, there's no way to get it done in the timelines that are there. I used another example as far as ordering equipment that may take 1 year to 2 years to actually even make it onto the island. So we ask you to look at those. And if you have any questions on that, that's what we're here for. You can reach out and we can talk to. We want to make sure also that you're coordinating with agencies around you. We've had grants this year that involve several different agencies, and it's been kind of like fixing the wing while flying on bringing people together and stuff. So what we want to do is make sure that your coordination with agencies is upfront, consistent, and throughout, and making sure that you have buy-in by the partners that you may be affecting through the project. And basically working together. The project, being successful in this project, is making sure that there's good communication and good inclusion by people across the board. And this means that up front, there's going to be a lot of talking, a lot of meetings and things, and being transparent in what your objectives are and where you're going. And I think you'll see that you'll have a great partner inclusion with the people that you may be next to or actually assisting you in what you're doing. And the last thing to this is, a lot of times if you reach out and ask, people are more than willing to jump in and help. So you may actually bring more people into preventing or actually creating a better solution to whatever the fuel or management problem is and where you're working. Next slide, please. So key takeaways. Make sure that you focus on clear, implementable projects that are realistic and that you can meet the timelines. You want to make sure that you follow the application guidance carefully. You can download this on the website up front. You can look at it. We have the form that you can fill out that'll help you put the application process together. But most importantly, ask questions and seek assistance early. If you're putting a submittal in, don't wait till the day before to put it in, because if there's questions, we may not be able to get back to you before we actually start doing the ratings. So the sooner you get your stuff in, the sooner we can assist. And if you have any questions, communicate. I can't stress enough how important that is and how we can help out. Next slide, please. And in general, you can take this information down. This is how you can get in touch with us. We're here to help. We're here to help facilitate and make sure that this is successful. The better we are at successful on this area, the more successful we are in the communities, which means our communities are much safer and more preventive from the effects of fire. And with that, we're going to go to question and answers. And Jen, if you could bring the slides down, and we'll open it up.
Eric, we did get some in the chat box, so maybe we'll open it up to those that have questions now. And then if there's time, I would like to ask some of the questions that were in the chat box, especially since we have Mike on the line.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and hit the chat box. I got to open it up.
I've got
Oh, you want me
two that are, if you're ready, I've got two that were have been unanswered. If you want, we can go ahead and start with the first.
Sounds good.
We've got a great one asking, should we include Hawaiian diacritical marks or leave them out? Some grants don't want diacriticals like the CDWG, so this is a great question.
Mike, did you have an opinion on that?
However you like to write the words, it doesn't matter to me. I know that like for the longest period of time there weren't diacriticals, particularly in the old newspapers, and so it's not necessary. However you want to write those words, it's all good
Eric,
with me.
is there using our software program? Is there any limitations to that? I think that was the what people were asking.
I don't know. I'll have to find out on that, and I'll definitely get an answer back out. I'd say go ahead and use it. It'll probably just give a strange marker in the the field. But I'll talk to Megan and make sure that we're clear on that.
Okay, the second question is asking about, as to removal of invasive trees and shrubbery, what about earth movement? Are there movement restrictions? Can we pull out the stumps with this grant as well?
Once again, Mike, did you want to take that? I've got an answer too for you, but I'll let Mike go first.
Stump removal, all good. There's a bit more of a process involved in actually doing the earthwork, particularly doing due diligence for any archaeological issues, sites that may come up, as well as all kinds of other permits that could get triggered there.
Yeah, and depending on the amount of area of disturbance could also require special permitting and stuff with the county that you're in. So where I don't think there's a problem taking the stumps out, as Mike was saying, depending on the size and the scope of what you're disturbing as far as the ground, that could become problematic.
Someone's also asking in the chat about where we'll be posting the recording. That will be on our YouTube channel, and it should happen pretty quickly too as well. So I'll post that in the chat as to where our YouTube channel is. Just keep checking back there, and we'll post it as soon as we have it.
We can also post it on our website. That's an easy website, and we'll just keep that our one-stop shop for anything related to this grant program. Somebody asked in the chat box, they went to that website and they couldn't find where to apply. So I just want to let folks know, if you go to that website, you scroll down and you're going to see 3 click buttons. One of them will be to download the RFP, the request for proposals document, which gives you all the instructions about this grant program. The second one will be to download the application checklist. This is a Word document that you can use to start composing the answers to the questions. That way you're not writing the application for the first time on the portal. You can just paste your answers from your Word document into the web portal. And then the third button, I believe it's the third, is the link to apply. And that will go to the actual application portal where you create an account and start entering all of the information.
There's another question that came up about the fencing.
Mike, can we ask you some of these, the eligible projects, allowable expenses question?
The fencing for grazing management is allowed. The deer fencing is a little bit more of a complicated question there. We'd have to see it what the fence is in relation to the project itself and how the fuels reduction is related with the deer fence. So that one's a little bit more complicated.
Okay, we have the next question from Kat. She asks that she saw in the presentation that Hawaii Farmers Union Foundation was a grant recipient in 2025 for grazing management. We're a member of Hawaii Farmer Union United. Can we apply for a grant through Hawaii Farmers Union Foundation in 2026? Is there a group of multiple farms applying through Hawaii Farmers Union Foundation jointly?
In terms of eligible entities, the Hawaii Farmers Union Foundation last year was an eligible entity, which is how they were awarded. So again, if you're an entity that doesn't have either a 501c3 or 501c4, or you're not a government entity, then you're going to have to partner with an entity that does have eligible status.
Okay, next question is this. We might have already answered this, but it's from Kat again. She's asking, is fencing for grazing management an allowed expense? I believe Mike answered that. Did we say yes on that, Mike?
Yes, I said yes on that.
Great. Just confirming. Thank you for that. Next question's from Joseph Blackburn. They said, we have a hillside that is a major fire hazard, but is very steep and has rockfall issues. Removing or grazing the guinea grass may not be a total solution. What can be used to replace guinea grass where access is limited by grade?
This is a good reminder, as you're sort of brainstorming what the mitigation approaches or options are for a specific area, please do reach out to us if you need some technical assistance or support. We do have that on our team. We can address that question now, although, this is site specific and specific to this one person. So I would suggest, if it's okay, that we ask that you reach out to us on the side and jump on a call with Eric to discuss what your project idea is.
Okay, thank you
Does that
so
work,
much.
Eric?
Yeah, it works good for me.
Okay.
Next up is from Amara. She asks, we are an HOA in the Wildland Urban Interface. We are surrounded by forest preservation land on a mountain. Would some of the surrounding landowners, such as KSBE, be eligible, or could it be a joint effort? KSBE started a fuel break around part of our community, but has not completed it. This would benefit the community to have a completed fuel break.
I'll say
Eric?
yes up front. The more you can get partners involved and actually working together, I think is good for the overall project. And a holistic approach is always better than just kind of a postage stamp kind of approach to these projects. So if you can get in with with them, that would be fantastic. If you're asking, can you do your work through KSB, that wouldn't be for us to decide. That would be basically up for them to decide if that was it. But reaching out and having several partners working together is always a better way of actually performing these types of grants.
Great. Next question is, what about removing the halikoa, including the root? Do you think this requires a special permit? I have never heard of that in the county of Hawaii.
And it looks
You don't
like
need a
Mike
permit for
answered that.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Oh, I do see Mike's answer. Thank you, Mike. Bernard is asking, just to check, once you're in the application portal, can we save our input without submitting?
Yes, absolutely. So you go in, you log in, you can fill out what information you want, and when you close out, it'll be there. It's not until you get to the last page with everything in, there's an actual submit button, which will submit your final proposal. Just so you know, though, once you submit your final proposal, there is still the opportunity for you to go in. You can print out what you submitted, and you can actually download that so you'll have it as a PDF. Up until that point, it gives you the option of editing. So anytime you go back, you can go pick up where you left off and then finish off what you were working on.
Great. Another question asking for clarity on the fencing issue. Please clarify if fencing could be permanent for grazing management.
As long as that grazing management is for fuel reduction, yes, we will fund the creation of that fence for fuel reduction purposes.
Great. Next question is if an applicant doesn't have in-house capacity, can they partner with a private contractor for fuels reduction work? And is that viewed favorably?
Yes, you may contract out the work. Yes, that is not a problem.
Next
We
question.
realize not everybody has that capacity to do that work.
Thank you, Mike. Next question is from Joy. She asked, could we use the grant to get an engineering proposal for the slope 20% grade and rockfall issues and big load fuel and history of fires?
This is a technical question here that we'd have to hear more about the project. I'm assuming just right off the bat in terms of the rockfall grade issues, those are separate really for us. It's outside the scope of this grant program. We're really here for fuels reduction work, not necessarily slope stabilization. That's out of our wheelhouse and we don't fund those types of projects. But you know, that's a difficult one.
That is the end of the questions that I see in the chat. If anyone has a question that they'd still like to ask and maybe hasn't done yet, either come off mute or go in the chat. Oh, we've got another one. Could funding be used for professional evaluation, professional evacuation planning for a large ridge community and may need professional company such as Dudek to evaluate and provide large scale evacuation plans?
I'll defer to you on that, Mike. I believe the question is the question you're asking is, can you contract out a a fire evacuation plan for a community?
Yeah, I believe that we can do that. We'd also like to have like a little bit more of a comprehensive plan just in terms of reducing hazards for the community overall. Not just the evacuation route, but reducing the risk overall, reducing fuels around the area, et cetera. And have something shovel ready, that things, actionable items that could come out of that plan.
And I did notice we had a question in the chat asking about when you reach the portal and trying to get to the application. Keep in mind, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong here, you have to create a email address and password. So you have to have an account. After you create the account and hit login, that will take you to the application. Eric, am I right on that one?
You are correct, yes.
And if you're looking, and if you're maybe saying, I'm not ready to commit to making a sign in, just know that on the website, we have a list of all the questions in Word format so that if you want to kind of take a look at everything before you start answering on the website officially, we have that in place so that you can actually fill out the form beforehand and then transfer everything over if that makes you more comfortable. Right, Eric?
That's correct, yes.
Great. Hopefully that answered that one.
If I also just want to mention, if you guys have specific questions about what's eligible or expenses that are eligible or not eligible, please just use the email address grantprograms@hawaiiwildfire.org. And if you just tell us, give us as much information, as much detail as you can, it'll be really easy for us to send you a quick response. What we might not have time for is if everybody wants to jump on Zoom and talk through different things, just because the turnaround for these applications are so quick. So please use that email freely and give us as much context as you can so that we can have a better understanding and be able to answer your question quickly on email. And Mike, I do want to mention, I'm hearing all of these great projects, just the folks that are showing up on the line. And so my question to you is, can we please get more money so we can fund everybody that's on here?
Maybe.
And Bernard, you were asking about letters of support. Are you asking where you download those into the application process, or I'm not sure what the question is.
Are you recommending that we try to get letters of support?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
there is a place. There is a place, I believe, where we can put that in supplemental information. But
Yes, anything that you can do to show that you have a broad scoped approval of the submittal, I think it will help out in the long run. On the last page of the application process, there's an area there for you to click on and actually download documents. Those letters of support or anything else that you put back there should be in a PDF format, for the ease of handling.
So Eric, I do want to mention, because I'm getting a couple private messages from folks saying that they went to the website, they scroll down, they found the button to apply, they click on it, and it takes them to the web portal. They create the account, but they still don't see how to enter into the portal to start answering the questions.
Okay, I will get on that today and I'll get an answer back out. I'm not sure how to get to the individuals, but if it's inside the chat here with their web addresses, I can get back to them.
And the only thing, just since people are still on the call, we have a few minutes, I'm going to quick share my screen just to show folks what the web page looks like. So again, this is the web page that hosts all of the information about the grant program. So it's hwmo.org. If you just go to hwmo.org, you can always go to this link up here that says grant programs. If you want to check out last year's projects, you can click on the 2025 one, but for this year's, it's the 2026 one. And it will take you to the program website. There'll be some brief information here. You keep scrolling. It's this section to apply for funding that has what you want on it. So we talked about the worksheet where you can prepare your answers before you enter it into the web portal. We talked about the request for proposals document, which again, you want to look at that in full. And then if you click here to apply, and by the way, it says using Google Chrome is going to be your safest bet. So if you click that, it's going to open up a new web page. And this is the portal that we're talking about. Now I already have a username and password, but if this, I think it would allow you to create a new username and password. Is that right, Eric?
That is correct. Yeah, it'll usually come on and say register. I'm just checking right now because all my emails have already been used to test the site. I'm going right in. I'll reach out to Open Water, who's actually managing that software, and make sure that there's no snafus with it.
And please email us if you're having issues with the portal.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So we have about 6 minutes, and we don't plan on closing the meeting until everybody will be the last ones to leave. So feel free, if anybody has questions, there's the chat box, or you're welcome to come off mute or raise your hand on Zoom. Looks like Stan, let's see, we have Stan will go first and then Bernard second.
Good morning. I did create an account on the portal, and when you click the application process, all it does is take you to register for the Zoom meeting. It does not take you to the application.
Well, we'll have to go see where that's an issue. I'll get in touch with them as soon as we're done with this, and then we'll get that back out and corrected.
Okay, and in addition, the Lanikia HUA has ongoing projects for the clearing of a 17-acre escarpment where we did have a fire back in '08, and for clearing of fire breaks around it. Would that be eligible for grants?
With the limited information that I have, I don't know. It could be. I think put your proposal together. We'll see, and we'll be in touch. You know, if you want to shoot me an email with what your proposal is, I can follow up and get back with you on that.
Thank you.
Bernard, I see your hand up.
It's just one comment that we have essentially 3 weeks to set up partnerships. It would have been useful to have a little more time before. I know that things comes together at the last minute, but more advanced noticed would have been I think would allow some people, especially new in this area, to establish the partnerships better. That's just not a criticism. I know that you are trying to do that as fast as possible, but
Yeah, and I just want to mention, these funds are intended for projects that have been where groups, we love partnerships. And like Eric said, the more people that are part of it, the more successful a project will be. So these funds are for those projects where these partnerships are established, where you guys have been talking about this work, where you have a project ready to go, you just lack the funding to make that happen. And it's a 1-year thing. So shovel ready, 12 months implementable are the in Fiols work are the key words here. But I totally hear you, Bernard. And hopefully we can keep this grant program ongoing and we can open up a third round next year. Other questions, thoughts, feedback for us? So again, we'll have the recording and we'll upload it to our website, which will probably direct you to our YouTube. We will also put together an FAQ of all the questions that were asked and answers to those that we can't answer with the information that we do have from you guys. And please, again, our email address is grantprograms@hawaiiwildfire.org. It's on the website. Reach out. The more information you can provide, the quicker we'll be able to respond back to you. The deadline for applications is right around the corner, April 20th. I want to thank Mike Walker in particular for pursuing these funds and making this possible for all of us. And we are super honored and grateful to be able to support all of you guys in not just your projects, but in any technical support that you need or application support that you need to get these applications submitted. So thank you again, Eric, Jen, thank you for making this webinar happen for us. And we look forward to seeing all the applications that come in.
And we'll get an answer for the site, what's going on. So.
Mike, do you have any last words?
I appreciate everybody's time and interest in the program, and looking forward to all the applications coming in. So thanks for your time, folks.
Thanks, everybody.